A picture is worth 1,000 words. This oft-repeated phrase holds especially true in the digital era, where, in an urban setting, an individual might expect to consume around 10,000 photographic or digitally rendered images in a single day. Photojournalism emerges from this visual barrage with the unique goal of relating a full story to viewers through images. When the documentary lens turns on human subjects, especially those in poverty, it becomes especially important to consider what story is being told. Humans retain images better than text. In one U.S. National Academy of Sciences study, participants recognized over 2,000 images by memory alone with 90% accuracy. Thus, both shocking front cover features of starving children and supporting images on the nightly news have a distinct impact on public perception of people in poverty. With public opinion at the root of policy decisions and dignity at stake in these media portrayals, a better understanding of the complex interaction between photojournalism and poverty is vital. Photojournalism presents a unique opportunity to capture a piece of the life or humanity of an individual. Ideally, images of individuals in poverty connect the viewer and subjects by evoking a shared sense of vulnerability. They highlight the universal insecurity of human life with the potential to bond impoverished subjects to an expansive audience. This power suggests the ability of photojournalism to inspire a legion of change-making advocates toward policy improvements. However unlikely it may seem, this real-world change occurred in response to Dorothea Lange's 1936 composition, Migrant Mother. This iconic image, captured during the height of the Great Depression in the migrant camps of Nipomo, California, features a forlorn and weathered mother surrounded by her 3 young children. The woman wears a concerned expression, which suggests a sense of worry as her worn hands help support and comfort. Some viewers call to mind familiar depictions of the Madonna and Child in comparison with Lange's portrayal. Still, for others, the mother's ragged appearance suggests hard work and labor in direct contrast with the popular view of the poor as lazy and undeserving. Her pained expression invites viewers to relate with understandable anxiety about an uncertain future. Overall, Lange portrayed a strong, caring, and dignified woman in a position of unimaginable hardship. This casting eventually helped improve conditions in the Nipomo migrant camp after a press agency contacted relief officials, leading to a delivery of 20,000 pounds of food and blankets to the 2,500 families housed there. Taking a broader view, the photo initiated activism, which helped spur the creation of anti-poverty programs on a state-by-state basis, and eventually supported the institution of Roosevelt's New Deal anti-poverty interventions. Lange's careful and mindful composition harnessed the power of photojournalism to connect viewer and subject with implications beyond the frame. More recently, Nilüfer Demir's Syrian Boy on the Beach had an impact much the same. The arresting image features the body of a young Syrian boy lying face down on a beach, waves washing into shore around him. Taken in 2015, the photo came to light amid the Syrian civil war, which led millions to flee the Middle East for Northern Europe. Like the young boy Demir depicted, many lost their lives on this perilous voyage. The shock of seeing one so young and innocent dead and alone in this frame is immediate. Following its release in September 2015, Syrian Boy on the Beach appeared on front covers across Europe. Meanwhile, social media gave photojournalism a new outlet. The image quickly went viral, and its prevalence across platforms increased visibility for both the Syrian civil war and the associated refugee crisis. Eliciting responses of sadness, grief, outrage, and shame, the image certainly played a role in shaping European refugee policies and public perception. When thousands of Syrian refugees arrived on German shores later that year, they were welcomed with open arms. Worldwide, policymakers were faced with public pressure to address or confront the crisis. United States President Barack Obama and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau each unveiled plans to resettle Syrian refugees to their respective nations. In the same vein as Migrant Mother, Syrian Boy on a Beach serves as proof that, especially in the digital age, photojournalism has the power to shape public opinion on a global scale. While it was tragically too late to save the boy Demir captured, millions of refugees living in poverty, fleeing their homes in search of basic resources and safety, were saved in conjunction with a single image. The aforementioned cases serve as clear examples of the capacity for purposeful documentary photography to improve the well-being of individuals experiencing dire poverty. Often lacking social capital or political sway, works like those of Demir and Lange give impoverished individuals agency by binding their precarious humanity with that of the viewer. This potential alone suggests motivation to further study photojournalism. Harnessing images to inspire social change seems a relatively simple solution compared with costly and complicated alternative interventions. Some would argue that this simplicity deems photojournalism a poor candidate for further investigation. After all, a photo is a photo. However, when that photo features a human subject, matters become more complicated. Photographing people in poverty involves an undeniable power imbalance, both between the photographer and subject and viewer. Fred Volte, a former news editor and journalism professor at Wayne State University, argues that this power imbalance can lead to the creation of poverty porn. In Volte's terms, this type of media includes the use of images to construct a reality in which those portrayed have no say. Motives are not determined by the subjects of the photos. A photographer or news outlet has the power to ascribe meaning to an image. Whether this context is true to reality or the life of the subject is sometimes debatable. Not only can this phenomenon revoke agency from subjects in poverty, it also has the power to reinforce stereotypes. Migrants compose an extremely vulnerable population. Fleeing from their homelands, these individuals are often without resources, leaving them impoverished and lacking agency. In a 2019 analysis conducted across 10 European countries, Lily Chuliraki and Tiana Stolik examined 84 front-page images of migrants, finding that photojournalists largely represented the population as either victims in need of pity or threats. These portrayals further strip agency from those already lacking it, giving migrants little say in their own stories and reinforcing the public perception of this group as either utterly powerless or increasingly threatening. Photojournalism in African nations echoes this previous account. Here, documentary photography, particularly of children, is often harnessed for fundraising by relief organizations. Regardless of pure intentions, these images often lacked context. Depictions of emaciated children featured online or in mailings are rarely paired with the child's name or the story behind her plight. In his 2002 collection, Underexposed, photographer Colin Jacobson published an image of a British film crew capturing an emaciated child sitting in the dirt. The photojournalists, on assignment with UNICEF, failed to portray with their photograph what Jacobson knew. The child had been brought outside specifically for said photo shoot. While some may argue that such images are vital for fundraising purposes, they often use people in poverty as props, stripping them of their dignity. Moreover, these depictions can reinforce a colonial gaze that infantilizes Africans in the eyes of a Western viewer. A 2002 research report, entitled The Live Aid Legacy, surveyed the British public with the goal of assessing perception of developing nations. 80% of respondents in this comprehensive survey strongly associated the developing world with doom-laden images of famine, disaster, and Western aid, while 74% cited a belief that these nations depend on the money and knowledge of the West to progress. The report identifies television and news images as a primary inspiration of these views. Thus, even well-intentioned photojournalism can dehumanize and stereotype. These conclusions hold true across continents. In the United States, photojournalism involving poverty often similarly enforces negative stereotypes. A review study conducted between 2009 and 2012 examined coverage of poverty in Time, Newsweek, U.S. News & World Report, New York Times Magazine, and Business Week. 63% of accompanying images of individuals in poverty featured Black subjects. This constitutes a vast overrepresentation, considering Black individuals made up just 22% of those actually in poverty during this period, according to U.S. Census Bureau data. In contrast, whites and Hispanics were greatly underrepresented. Whites made up just 29% of portrayals as compared with their true proportion of 44%. Similarly, Hispanics made up 4% as compared with an actual percentage of 24%. While it is true that during this period, the poverty rate among Black Americans was over double that among white Americans at 26%, the Hispanic poverty rate was 23% during this same time. Thus, the comparative overrepresentation of Black Americans in poverty ascribes race to a more universal condition and perpetuates negative stereotyping of Blacks as lazy. This notion is supported by a series of experiments conducted by Shantu Iyengar to conclude that news portrayals of white people in poverty led to attributions of responsibility for the condition to society at large. Meanwhile, representations of Black people in poverty led blame to be placed on the individuals themselves. Similar studies have revealed these negative stereotypes to shape white citizens' views on welfare policies, alongside broader laws on affirmative action and voter ID policies. Selective photojournalism reinforces a tragic history of profound racism in a nation supposedly built on the ideals of equality, with significant repercussions for Black individuals truly in poverty. These negative instances of photojournalism are not to argue that capturing individuals in poverty is overtly wrong. On the contrary, as Dorothea Lange's Migrant Mother and Nilofer Demir's Syrian Boy on the Beach prove, photojournalism may be harnessed to shift public perception and even policy for the good of people in poverty. In order to align future photojournalism with cases like the latter, respect must be at the core of every shoot. Journalists should commit to telling a story in congruity with the life of the subject, not a preconceived narrative in which people serve as props. While doing so might require a more long-term and personal engagement, such should be the expectation that distinguishes photographers from photojournalists. Successful written stories about human lives require this level of commitment and complexity. And the previous accounts prove that a photo is indeed worth 1,000 words. Thus, journalists should be held to the same storytelling standards as any other journalist. While this may require increased time and resources, to make this commitment would be to the benefit of all. In its day, Migrant Mother stood out to viewers for depicting a hardworking woman in contrast with the popular perception of the poor as lazy and weak. Syrian Boy on the Beach shocked the world and shifted public policy by attaching an innocent youth to a population often viewed as threatening. Impactful photojournalism on poverty does not conform to populist stereotypes. It confronts and contrasts them in ways that highlight the humanity of its subjects. Photographers hoping to make change and see success should therefore embrace the challenge posed by respectfully capturing people in poverty. As news is increasingly conflated with imagery, anyone committed to honoring the dignity of this group must learn to recognize the difference between photography and photojournalism and use their knowledge to advocate for practices that uphold this distinction. After all, while the above cases diverge in outcome, they offer definitive proof that photos hold undeniable power. To address poverty should be to harness this power for the greater good.